Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Comics Evolve, where we discuss all things around comics media culture with your hosts, Andy, Jarian, and Alex.
Welcome to Comics Evolve with myself, Andy Stead.
And I'm Jarian Gibson.
And I'm Alex Stroud.
We're here today to talk about news in the pop culture world this week. We've got lots of news on Star Wars, lots of Marvel stuff, some DC stuff, some boys stuff, lots of different bits and pieces. But we're going to kick the show off today with some Star Wars bits and pieces because we have had Star Wars Celebration over here in London this week. And there's been lots of stuff coming out of that. Lots of new releases about movies and shows and animation and all sorts of bits in the pipeline. I've seen some great stuff on social media. So the cosplays these days, guys. If you've seen some of these cosplays, they are absolutely disgustingly good. To the point where they're like as good as the makeup and costumes in TV shows. They're unbelievable. I don't know if have you seen any of the stuff that's been going around this week?
Yeah, it's really good.
I feel like 3D printing and a lot of like special effects that people do at home have gotten so much better like in the previous decades that like, you know, with the 3D printing thrown on top, so you can make like pieces for almost anything that you kind of want right now. And people are doing that at home. So now like people can really make costumes and they make them like almost movie quality. It's crazy.
I mean, just look at the helmets you can make with 3D printing that I've seen out there. You know, all the helmets, the bust and that kind of stuff who look really like movie accurate type out there. So
well, I think the Marvel Legends pieces that have been made, the helmets and you know things like the Eye of Agamotto from Marvel and things like that, they're really great, and those pieces kind of accentuate a costume, don't they? You know, you can sort of get a Mandalorian helmet, you know, official Mandalorian helmet from the Legends series or wherever they're from. And then if they, like you said, Alex, they can 3D print and then they can get these other little bits and pieces done. And all of a sudden they just brings these costumes together. But yeah, I've seen some really impressive stuff from Celebration this weekend. It's been, like I say, it almost blows you away. I'd love to have been there just to see some of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to kick the show off with our Star Wars stuff. We've got lots of Star Wars news. So, Jarian, let's start cracking through it.
yeah, so first one off, Kathleen Kennedy on Kevin Feige's Star Wars film. She wanted to say that Kevin Feige's project was something announced in the press or I suppose fandom, but there was nothing. Nothing ever got developed. We never discussed an idea. As everybody knows, Kevin is a huge Star Wars fan. If he did come up with something, I would be all ears. But that's never really happened, so it's not an abandoned project. It never really happened.
So it was sounds like it never got off the ground, really.
Yeah.
It wasn't just something they decided to do and then just scrapped. It just never really happened.
Yeah, so that's interesting that they just, you know, kind of that all got out there and picked up steam, but there was nothing behind it. So
fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor is down for another season, but currently there are no plans for a season 2.
I'm not sure it needs another season, you know. I think it was a nice little package, and I don't know. I'm not saying that we don't need to see any more Obi-Wan. I just don't think we need to see another season about Obi-Wan. I mean, how many more stories can we tell, especially in the gap between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope or the first Star Wars movies? Like, they've told a decent story there, and it was good. I enjoyed it. Is there another story there? I'm not sure. There might be other Obi-Wan stories, but not necessarily in that gap.
Do you feel like some Star Wars shows like that should be almost like transitionary tales like the MCU does with some seasons? Like WandaVision, for instance, was meant to get us to Multiverse of Madness. Yeah. It wasn't really meant to be like hey, let's get to a WandaVision season 2, you know?
Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, it was almost like, let's move the story on with this. They're not designed to have multiple seasons. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't mind seeing if Disney are looking at this special presentation format across the board. I'd take an Obi-Wan story, a tale of Obi-Wan from some point in his history, which actually is really interesting about Star Wars, because a lot of this, with the MCU. So one of the biggest complaints, apart from the obvious, Jarian, calm down, with Black Widow, Now you know why. Now you know why I said it. Apart from the obvious, yeah, we won't talk about that. But one of the biggest complaints about Black Widow was it was out of place.
Mhm.
You know, it was misplaced timeline wise. Most of Star Wars stuff is just all over the place. But I
Yeah.
quite like that. I like the idea that it's not all in sequential order, and you can kind of it dabbles and shows you a bit of story from 100 years ago, and then shows you another bit of story from a gap in between two movies, and then another piece. I think generally speaking, most fans are probably intelligent enough to kind of at least like understand that they're not in sequential order,
Mhm.
So I like the idea that they can dabble with time.
I feel like it puts you in a unique situation where you can have a universe where you can literally do like one season of a show and then be like, all right, we're at a crossroads here. We can either do another show or we can do a movie now. You know what I'm saying? Where like a lot
Yeah.
of like universes, they don't have that option. So it's like you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's flexible, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I like how you use the WandaVision comparison because at a WandaVision we're getting possibly a Vision series, possibly and we know Agatha's coming, and even we could get one about the boys at some point too. So, do you think they could spin off out of Obi-Wan like a more on young Leia, maybe possibly series, or even Vader, because with the Vader appearance and that kind of stuff. So they could use it to spin off other series. But yeah, I don't think we need another season 2. Isn't there a story that Obi-Wan had a love interest too at one point? I thought.
I'm
they-
not sure.
I thought he did, and possibly a child out there, maybe. Or am I wrong thinking about that with Obi-Wan? I'm thinking with the wrong Jedi.
I think you might have the wrong Jedi. I mean, Obi-Wan was very much he didn't want to break any rules, did he? He didn't like it when Anakin was breaking rules, and they're not supposed to have family or anything like that.
But wasn't it like
maybe-
Rebels or somebody or something else? He had something going on where they thought that someone could be tied to him, if I'm not mistaken.
potentially.
Or even too, maybe he does find Qui-Gon and they find ways to communicate, and Qui-Gon finds his way back from death type thing. They could do something about that too as well. So there's ways they could do it. It doesn't have to be a continuation of of the last season. It could just be another story of Obi-Wan.
That's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's kind of what Alex was saying. It doesn't necessarily need to be the next season of that story. It doesn't need to lead on. It can just be another set of stories or another story about that person or that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Mandalorian. There was new footage that were shown, and this was not released publicly, but it did hint at Thrawn's arrival. So yeah, interesting to see. And it's supposedly they showed a lot of the next chapter. And it looks like the final 2 episodes will be directed by Rick Fury Muha. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But they also showed chapter 23 in its entirety as well. Producer Rick Furimura, I'm sorry, I mentioned his name, has confirmed the title of Mandalorian is no longer considered to be just Din Djarin, as season 3 explores more of the Mandalorians as people instead of just a person. So, the next Mandalorian season could be another Mandalorian we go to. We could, it could be,
Bo-Katan.
yeah, sorry, I was going blank there. It could be Bo-Katan. Yeah,
Great to see if that's who you meant.
yeah. It could be the blacksmith. It could be the big dude with the big gun. He is a kid too as well. So we could see potentially other seasons of Mandalorian from other Mandalorians' perspective.
Yeah.
Andor is getting a season 2, and it is eyeing a late 2024 release.
Yeah.
So,
Good. I really enjoyed the first season. I thought it was a really interesting take on the Star Wars universe. Showed that political corruption side of it, and that darker sort of, but more behind the scenes. It was less shiny, if you will. I think, to be honest, I think actually, if you look at the way the Mandalorian has gone this season, it has gone a little bit more shiny. Let's just use that word. It's got a bit more shiny and a bit more sort of friendly, where the first season was almost gritty, and not that it needs to be not family friendly. That's not what I mean, but I think Andor upped the stakes a little bit. It really did. And I've just rewatched the final scene in the final episode, or not the final scene, but the big speech scene, Merva's speech scene in the last episode of Andor, and it is actually incredible television. It really is. And I think when it was released, it was just after the time of, so for us Brits, just after the time of Queen Elizabeth II's funeral. And there's a fantastic funeral march in there, which was quite, reminiscent of the Queen's funeral, actually. The slow sort of drum music and everybody walking through the streets. And it really built. And then her speech, and then the way that the sort of normal people, it was like an uprising against the empire. It was superb, really, really sort of hard hitting to watch. Fantastic television, really good, really enjoyed it. So yeah, really, really looking forward to a second season, actually.
I have a confession to make.
Go on.
I still haven't watched Andor yet.
Oh, that's fine. I've still not finished the Batman.
There you go. The big trailer though was Ashoka. So we know that that was the big trailer shown, and that is going to be releasing August of this year. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is going to be Hera, and Natasha Liu Bordizzo as Sabine. Lars Mikkelsen reprised his role as Grand Admiral Thrawn. He voiced him in the Star Wars animated series Rebels. David Tennant will also reprise his role as Huang. And what it seems like is that Ashoka appears to be a direct sequel to the Star Wars Rebels animated series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, now I've not watched the Rebels animated series. My son's watched it all, and he watched that trailer with me the other day, and he was really excited because, like you said, there was a lot of characters from that animated series that come over, which was something I was talking about with another friend of mine, how the animated series they're all canon.
Mm-hmm.
They're all canon. We've started a rewatch. I'm gonna watch them all. We started a rewatch of Clone Wars, and we're gonna go through all of it. There's a lot of it, but we're gonna do it. But I love the way that they've kind of intertwined it and made it, made it lore, made those animated series important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts of like any of the Star Wars stuff is, I think it's the fight with Obi-Wan and Darth Maul where he cuts him in half and like he falls down that pit or whatever. And I think I've seen like in one of the animated series, there is like basically Obi-Wan runs into him again, and basically he put some robot legs together and crawled out of the hole basically, and comes back and actually I think becomes the ruler of Mandalore at one point in the show. Like takes the Darksaber or whatever. He wins in combat, gets the Darksaber and becomes ruler of Mandalore. So they do some kind of cool stuff where they kind of intertwine stuff.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, there's some great cast members in that Ahsoka show. Some really great cast members in that, and it's exciting to see Rosario Dawson as well. I think she's incredible. I think she's an incredible actress, and I think she's really taken that role on as something she seems really passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of that too, with Lars Mikkelsen being Thrawn, I wonder if he's also going to show up in Mandalorian as well, or just a screenshot of him before season's end, because it does sound like we will get Moff Gideon back from what was shown, and that either he's mentioned or possibly shown, but before season's end in the Mandalorian.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and looking at the celebration, he was, Giancarlo Esposito was a big part of that. He was there obviously he's a big actor and a big guest anyway, but it seemed to me like they was promoting him that he was going to be in more. It wasn't just his appearance that he had as Moff Gideon in the first season of Mandalorian, and that he was actually, this is going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
So remember earlier I mentioned that Obi-Wan had a love interest.
Oh yeah.
So I looked it up, and you mentioned Clone Wars. It was during the Clone Wars they had it in Rebels. Okay. I believe that it was the Duchess of Mandalore, Satine Kryze. So they did have a love interest, and there was rumors that they had a child that she hid from him, but it's not canon though.
And is that the one that Maul kills in front of Obi-Wan? I think he kills her on Mandalore or something.
I believe so. I have to look more up to it, but yeah, I thought there was something there, but yeah, they didn't have a kid. It was rumored a kid, but it's not canon. So
Gotcha. Right. Okay. But yeah, Ahsoka's looking great. Really, really great. Great cast and great characters, bringing those animated characters to life. And it looks like some good villains as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
You know, three or four great villains. I think that's something that Star Wars does really well. Is villains.
They
I think
definitely do.
Yeah, they've got some really cracking villains over you know the entire universe. I think they've got some great villains, some really memorable ones as well. You know.
I feel like they've got like a deep pool of characters in Star Wars that like it's so many different like characters. They have quite a variety that they can kind of pull on and do a lot with. So
Yeah, and I think the way that they've got these different, they've almost drawn inspiration for villains from different things. So if you see in Book of Boba Fett, you had Cad Bane in there who was in some of the animated shows, and he was like a cowboy. You know, like a cowboy type villain. And then obviously we've just seen the pirate type villains in The Mandalorian, which were a bit weird, but still, you know, but you've got these pirate type villains, and then you've got obviously the Sith, and you've got you know,
like
other,
General Grievous, like
Mhm.
look at him.
yeah,
Like,
fantastic.
what is it? He takes the lightsabers from Jedis he's killed or whatever.
Yep.
That's an awesome like thing, and then he uses them all. Like that's kind of neat,
And I was watching. I think I said on the last show, I watched Tales of the Jedi, and there was a little bit in there about Count Dooku and why he turned. He kind of didn't even really turn from the light side to the dark side. It was more a political thing for him. It wasn't an emotional thing. It was a political thing. He didn't believe that the Jedi were doing the right things politically. So, and he sort of saw the Emperor and the Empire as something that would get the job done. You know. So
You think he was kind of like a false apprentice, almost, kind of, in a way.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, I mean, he was definitely used. That's for sure. That's for certain by the Emperor. But yeah, I just like the fact that, and then you've got Anakin on the other hand, who was totally emotional. Like he was sort of like, he almost knew it was the wrong thing to do, but he did it to try and save, Padme. So that was the complete opposite to Dooku. Dooku done it for almost what he saw as logical reasons, where Anakin done it for emotional reasons.
Yep.
It's almost like opposite ends of the spectrum between those two.
Yep.
Totally.
There were some new films announced as well. So Dave Filoni is confirmed to be directing a film that would tie together all the events of The Mandalorian.
Amazing.
So,
and Dave Filoni is one of the executive producers on the Clone Wars animated series, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting, actually. Really, really looking forward to that and seeing what he can do in live action in the Star Wars world.
James Mangold will direct a film based on The First Jedi.
And this is the same James Mangold that directed Logan, yeah?
I believe so.
That would be really exciting to go back that far.
Yeah.
I know we're going to talk about Acolyte in a minute, but that obviously goes back in the past. And like what I was saying earlier, the way they mix up their times, I think it's really interesting.
So is that probably going to include like the creation of the lightsaber and that kind of stuff, you think?
It could be, and the Force, that kind of stuff, and yeah,
learning about the Force and things like that. Yeah, I'd like to see that. I was talking to my son about the creation of lightsabers, where they have to use the kyber crystals and all of that kind of stuff, and I was saying we haven't seen that in live action yet, and it'd be nice to see that in live action, because people like myself who kind of missed the boat on the animation stuff, I guess just because of my age, we've missed out a lot of that lore around the lightsabers, because obviously it was explored quite a lot in certain, and the games as well. It's explored a little bit in the games. I think the Jedi Survivor with Cal Kestis, it's explored in that as well. But it'll be nice to see it explored in live action as well.
And speaking of James Mangold, he'll have the trifecta going here, because he's also going to be doing a DC project as well when we get to the DC news I'll talk about. So
cool deal.
He must just be sort of sitting there rubbing his hands together, doesn't he, at the moment?
So there is going to be a Rise of Skywalker sequel. Daisy Ridley returns as Rey in the new Jedi Order, set 15 years after the Rise of Skywalker.
That's all right. I quite enjoyed her as Rey, actually. Yeah. I think it could have been better, and I'm excited to see what they can do with her now that she's like a fully fledged like Jedi with a bit of confidence, and I quite like her. I think she's good.
I wonder where the story goes though, because it seemed like the Rise of Skywalker kind of put an end to things.
it might be the rebuilding of the Jedi.
Do you think
Mhm.
she'll go out and do like what Luke did and build a new, that kind of stuff, and hopefully doesn't have the whole Kylo Ren situation happen?
Yeah.
Also, too, it'd be interesting to see that if he returns in the series too as well.
I was listening to something the other day, and they were saying that maybe she will take on the storyline that a few of the books that were set after Return of the Jedi took on, which weren't played out in that sequel trilogy, or haven't really been explored at all. So around the cloning thing and around Mara Jade, Luke's wife was Mara Jade. That's so I heard that she was going to maybe take on some of that.
It'd be wild if her and Kylo / Ben Solo had a kid in this sequel, they got together, because it seemed like they had that connection there, and I wonder if they'll take that connection further, possibly, and make them, be a couple and have a child, possibly. That would be interesting. That would put some definitely things. That child would be going back and forth, and maybe that's how a new, similar to Kylo Ren with Luke, maybe a new order of Sith Lords starts too as well. So something to keep an eye on with that. Skeleton Crew is going to get a 2023 release. It was pitched by John Watts while filming Far From Home. Yeah, so he actually filmed that because him and Jon Favreau on Far From Home and that kind of stuff, and both doing things. He pitched it to him during that whole filming. So
okay, cool.
Interesting tidbit there. Jude Law's Skeleton Crew character is at the very least a Force user and possibly a Jedi.
Oh wow!
So from the news that's out there,
I like seeing all these little there's a great bit in the Ahsoka trailer where she said there's not many, or they say there's not many Jedi left. And I like all of those kind of missing Jedis that are just sort of scattered around the universe, and you sort of catch these little stories of them, like Ahsoka and Ezra in Rebels, and Cal in Jedi Survivor, and these other ones that you see, and even to the point of the fella that played the Jedi that got Grogu out that we saw the other week that voiced Jar Jar Binks. You kind of like, well, he could be out there somewhere as well.
Yeah.
We haven't seen his fate, so it's nice to know that they're still sort of scattered all over the place.
And there's always the Mace Windu angle too as well. We never saw what happened to him, and he could possibly pop up anywhere.
He could. Knowing Samuel Jackson, he'll just say, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, which one? Okay, is Cal the one that's the redhead guy that looks like that's actually a guy that played the Joker, I think, in WB, that looks just like him in real life? Is that the Cal one?
He's got the red hair. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if they end up doing him in live action, they have to cast that actor. He played the Joker for WB. What else was he in? He was in that show in Chicago with that family. With William H. Macy. I can't remember the name of this. Shameless. He was in Shameless as well.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. If they don't cast him in that role when it comes out, they're missing the mark, because he looks just like him.
Yeah, yeah. No, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah. My son's played that game. There's a new Jedi Survivor game coming out as well, isn't there? So, from what I saw, that was a really cool game.
Speaking of Jedi, Tales of the Jedi will return for a second season, so that's coming out. Star Wars Visions is going to be Volume 2 on May the 4th. For another Star Wars Visions.
Good date.
Yep. The Bad Batch is going to have its third and final season in 2024.
I like how some of these people are catching on now, that make shows are catching on to this. This is going to be the final season, and they tell you that it's going to be the final season, and I think they can commit then to a story, rather than just sort of doing another season. They sort of go, no, we're ending this now. I quite like that idea. It gives them a definitive date and a definitive finish.
And you mentioned the Acolyte. I actually don't have anything on the Acolyte in my notes here. So do you want to talk about that one real quick before I get to the last piece?
Yeah, let's do it.
Go ahead.
No, I thought you had something to say. No, so the Acolyte, that goes back as well. And that's looking at the past of the Sith. He's got Daphne Keane in it, which, you know, Marvel fans will know Daphne Keane from Logan. Yeah, that looks sort of really. Hopefully, that's going to show us from the Sif's perspective. It's going to be a show from the Sif's perspective. And as you know, I've always spoken about that kind of different angle, and who's the antagonist, who's the protagonist. It doesn't necessarily mean goody and baddie. It just means who's the goody and who's the baddie in that particular story. Mm-hmm. So I'm really interested in seeing a story and a whole movie or show or project from the quote unquote baddies side, having them being we're right, you know, because a lot of the time they do think that they're right for all sorts of different reasons, and maybe they are right in their own story. They're the hero of their own story, aren't they?
Everybody is.
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So why not? Can't we see some of that? Like, it'd be nice for us to see that, you know, and try and get into somebody else's head.
I always like bad guy films and seeing the bad guy win, so I'm all for it.
Yeah. No, that's right.
There's also a Young Jedi Adventures animated series announced. It's an original series that premieres May 4th on Disney Plus and Disney Junior. Young Jedi Adventures is set during the High Republic era and the prime of the Jedi Order. The animated series follows Jedi younglings as they study the ways of the Force, explore the galaxy, help citizens and creatures in need, and learn valuable skills needed to become Jedi along the way. The cast includes Jamal Avery Jr. as Kai Brightstar, Juliette Donenfeld as Lai Soleil, D. Bradley Baker as Nubs, Emma Bergman as Nash Durango, Jonathan Lipow as RJ-83, and Peter Michael as Master Yoda. So
awesome. It just reminds me, when you was reading out those names, like, why is there no sort of Daves in the Star Wars universe? Or John?
Yeah.
You know, they've all got
common names.
Yeah, that's it. But no, that's great. And you know, anything that's gonna sort of bring in new fans and young fans, just to introduce them into the world of Star Wars or Marvel or DC or Harry Potter or whatever it might be, whatever's relevant for them. But yeah, anything that can work.
That's all I have for the Star Wars celebration stuff. Before we get to general news, anything else you want to talk about for Star Wars?
No, I love the fact that it sort of seems to have picked up a lot of momentum. I think it got a bit of bad rap, didn't it? The whole Star Wars universe after that sort of, and around the prequel trilogy, sequel trilogy, sorry, and around the prequel trilogy for some of it as well, to be fair. And I think some of it was unfair because some of it was justified. I understand that there was some problems with the sequel trilogy. I mean, that second movie was almost just rehashing what had happened before, but there was some good stuff there and there was some potential. And I think obviously The Mandalorian has kind of reignited the sort of desire for more Star Wars stuff. And hopefully they've announced some good stuff. I think they've got some really good talent involved. So fingers crossed, the next sort of 5 or 6 years for Star Wars is going to be great.
Yeah, agreed.
I can definitely say, as like a Star Wars fan, I wasn't paying attention as much until The Mandalorian came out. And then once The Mandalorian came out, I was like, because I'm like not a big fan of the Jedi, so I was like, anything but the Jedi I'll watch, you know. So like when they came out with The Mandalorian, I was like, man, that's awesome. Like, this is something that's like right up my alley.
Yep.
And you know, so I was like gung ho. Like, you know, first season, I was like, I think I watched it like 3 times like through. So.
And the thing is, it's a big universe, isn't it? So you don't have to just focus on the Jedi. The Jedi aren't the only thing in the Star Wars universe. As we've seen, we've had Mandalorian, Andor, Book of Boba Fett, you know, all nothing really to do with the Jedi. Yeah, okay, there's been little dribs and drabs of Jedi in there, but the main focus hasn't been on the Jedis.
Yeah, but, which is good because all the movies, Jedi and Sith, is the main things. Like, we'll get sprinkles in here. Like, I would love to see a Wookiee series, you know, about the Wookiees. Yeah. I would love to see that. I'd love to see a Jabba series about the Jabbas, because, you know, we've only got bits and pieces of the Jabbas, and we know there's more out there. So we know there's other ways they can focus on, other stories they can tell. It's just that will they, and how will they do it? So
yeah, and it's like we've it always reminds me when I talk about things like this about the Flash TV show, the CW TV show, where everybody just ended up being fast in the end. That not in every show, there doesn't have to be a Jedi in everything. Like, you don't have to all of a sudden find out that, oh, they're a Jedi.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like, not everybody's going to be a Jedi, are they? and they don't have to always tell a story about a Jedi. So it's nice that we've got these other bits, that are going on, but they need to be like with Andor. To be fair, they were brave enough to just go, actually, we're not even going to include any Jedis in this at all. It's just going to be completely, away from that.
Which it's funny that you made the comparison to the Flash, because I've always thought it's funny because I always feel like it's weird. You got the Speed Force with the Flash and then the Force with, Star Wars. But then the Flash took it a step further, and later on they actually made 3 more forces that are like the Speed Force, and you have the Still Force, the Strength Force, and the Sage Force. So in addition to the Speed Force, you have those other forces out there now. It's just a very weird kind of concept, to kind of just throw out there oh yeah, there's 3 more other forces that you didn't know about all this time.
So these people could be getting their powers from them forces.
Well, there's there's a dude that's like a turtle, and he controls the Still Force. So basically, he slows everything down while the Flash moves fast. So it's a nice little kind of which one can outdo the other, kind of type of thing.
Brilliant.
It's interesting too that they have a Star Wars celebration, but there's nothing Marvel wise, right? Marvel's usually at D23 or Comic-Con or CinemaCon or one of the cons. But there has been some chatter about AvengerCon actually becoming a thing. And I don't know if it's just people talking or what, but I hope it becomes a thing, because I would love to see just a day just focus on Marvel stuff like they do with the Star Wars celebration.
And I think obviously they have D23 where they do lots of announcements, but I think the Star Wars celebration is very much for it seemed, although there's been some complaints about this particular celebration, it was too busy, etc. Although I have heard lots and lots of good reports as well, people that had time of their lives. It does seem to be centered around the fans, and the fans coming together and meeting up and just being nerds together, basically. Where I think the D23s and the of this world for Marvel, they're very much just sort of almost presentations of new stuff rather than a place for people to kind of get together like a normal Comic-Con. Like a normal Comic-Con is Star Wars celebration just for comics, where this is just Star Wars. So I like the idea of having this a Marvel celebration almost, but yeah, it looks fantastic. I mean, I've been living vicariously through sort of other people for the last 4 days, and I didn't really know a great deal about it until I knew it happened, but didn't really know a great deal about it until about 5 days ago, and now I want to go. But the next one's in Japan, so I'm not sure I'm going to get.
Oh, so it moves around different countries. That's interesting. Nice.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so the next one's in Japan, and they do it every 2 years, I think. So the next one's in 2025. Yeah, in Japan.
So that's kind of transitioning to general Disney, Marvel, and DC and other stuff. But we have a comment here from Noel Gonzalez, and I think this is a new follower on the YouTube side.
Hi, Noel.
Hey, CinemaCon almost ready predictions with Sony, Venom 3, which we know that's happening, so that's already in progress. Spider-Man 4, it has been rumored, and how they're going to do it. Nothing concrete yet, but there's been rumors about Spider-Man 4. Craven, which we know is coming as well. Disney Studios, Marvel Studios, Warner Brothers, Flash movie, and Universal on so CinemaCon later this month, basically. So yeah, so some of these we know that are coming. It's good to see more Flash stuff, because that trailer that dropped recently was really good. Hoping to see something at least on Craven, and would love to see some kind of Spider-Man 4 acknowledgement or more details around that than the rumor. The other one would be too that if they do something, speaking of Universal, I would love to see them kind of announce that rumor that Marvel has gotten the rights back from Universal and has basically ejected themselves out of the Hulu deal as well. So that's been something rumored also. So yeah, CinemaCon is something to keep an eye on, especially as it comes up here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
good comment, Noel.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and hi Noel, thanks for following. Drop us more comments as and when you feel necessary. That's a point actually. Before we go on to the other news, Noel's just brought up all of those things that are coming out. We've just been talking about all the Star Wars stuff, and we know we've got lots more Marvel content coming up, even though they are sort of slowing things down. We obviously got the James Gunn situation at DC, and there's going to be a whole new sort of load of projects coming out there. Do we ever feel like we'll get to this burnout phase this sort of superhero burnout that everybody talks about, quote unquote. Looking at Ant-Man, Quantumania, the takings, I don't think it quite got to 500 million, and they're already looking at saying it's going to be released on Disney Plus. So I don't think that's going to reach $500 million worldwide. Is it a thing? Are we going to get there?
No, I don't think we are, because I'll talk about Super Mario Brothers here, and what they did this opening weekend. And so I don't think the burnout is there. I think that the fatigue happened for a little bit because there was just so much Marvel content coming out. They didn't balance Disney Plus in the theaters very well, especially the last phase. And now they kind of pivoted to too much content. And we see them now course correcting and spreading things out more. I think they've seen that and they know how to balance that very well. But yeah, you have things like Star Wars, you have Marvel, you have DC, you have other things they're working on like Super Mario Brothers and other projects and so forth. But I don't think we'll get to that burnout yet, as long as they balance things properly and we don't always focus on the big characters. And I think Marvel's done very well of showing characters that aren't mainstream. Kicking off the MCU with Iron Man was a prime example of that. So I don't think we'll get to burnout, because plus you got the young kid generation that are coming up, and the way they're doing things. I don't know if we'll get there or not. At least I won't.
So I think that there is going to be a little bit of a shift that's going to happen, and I think that a lot of the audience that sees these type of movies are going to start to. I think video game projects are going to start to kind of like become more popular and more prevalent. I think Mario's been out 4 or 5 days and it's done almost $400 million. I mean, it's almost done what Ant-Man's done. You know what I'm saying? In like 4 days. And that's because Mario's been a character that's been around for decades. Everybody knows who Mario is. Everybody's played Mario before or played some form of a Mario game. They know who Donkey Kong is. People have played Super Smash Brothers. They played all kinds of games with that character in it. Now, second example, Last of Us. Look at that show. Look at how that's doing right now. It's another video game that's a show now that is doing extremely well. And there's a lot of other projects and things that I think they kind of missed the boat with, that they could actually do like a lot of good movies and a lot of good shows and stuff with.
I mean, look at Resident Evil for a while. How many Resident Evil projects have we seen come out based off that video game? And yeah, like if I had a wish list of video games I like to see made to movie, Legend of Zelda, Super Smash Bros, Metroid, Metal Gear Solid, Castlevania, you could probably take all those games and make those into projects.
And
Metal Gear Solid would be amazing. Red Dead Redemption as well.
Yes, that'd be great.
And see, most of those characters have been in the public eye for 10 years, like these video game characters and things, at least. So if you've spent a decade at least with a character, most of the public knows about it. They have attachment to the character, and therefore they have attachment to the movie, So
is that do you think to do with the age of the people that are going to be going to the movies as well? Because like you said, they've been playing these games, haven't they? And then they're going to say, oh, here's a movie about them.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can tell you that, like, if I said to my dad, hey, Dad, like, do you like Namor in the new Black Panther movie? My dad's not going to have a clue who Namor is. But if I say, hey, like, you know who Mario is? He's going to be like, oh, yeah, I know who Mario is. I used to play Super Mario on Super Nintendo, and I'm going to be like, okay. And it's just the fact that there are people that are excited to see this movie that are like 50, 60 years old that have been playing, like, these games forever. Never really expected to see a movie that was like pretty good, and I'm hearing that this movie is phenomenal. So
actually, I saw it Friday afternoon. Okay. We all went. So my daughter even wanted to go, and she's kind of the one that you got to kind of convince her into things. She was like, no, I want to go. So the four of us, my two kids and my wife, we went on Friday afternoon, and because they were out of school on Friday, most schools here, and they're off today as well, that movie theater was packed with families, and people that didn't have families of all ages as well in the movie theater.
That's what we want to see, is people back in the theaters. That's great. Just rewinding ever so slightly about this kind of the amount of content that Marvel in particular brought out. I do think that did have something to do with the pandemic. I do feel like they had lots of content that they was planning on releasing, and then they didn't. And whether they had it made or not, but they wanted to release it back then, and they'd kind of committed to making this stuff, and then they kind of did make it, or finished making it, and then released it all, and it all sort of got compacted into sort of a year and a half rather than 2.5 years. So it seemed like it was more, there was more content than what there should have been, because they were catching up yeah, I think that was probably something to do with it at
I,
least.
I feel like there was like a programming shift where the ideal was like post COVID was going to be that we were going to be in a different world, less theaters, less people attending theaters, more people
Yep.
looking at streaming services. So they were going to try and like focus to kind of like change the whole dynamic to be more of a streaming service universe, to where like you could go and that's, I mean, if you think about it, it's still sort of that way. As soon as you go see a movie and the next Marvel movie is on its way out, the last one is on the streaming service now.
Yeah.
So it's like it's still sort of that way, but I feel like that dynamic sort of changed. But like I don't think that they thought that it would almost reverse like post COVID, because it seems like people are starting to go back to the movie theaters. Like people said that movie theaters would die, but No Way Home made $2 billion. Top Gun Maverick made $1.5 billion. Like there are movies that are doing well in theaters right now.
There are, but you can't always bet to have those billion-dollar movies every time. You can't count on that, and I still think that theaters will have to adjust. Like for example, the local theater I go to, like even Andy said, one by him closed, and there's been theater closings. But they're gonna have to adjust. Like my local theater, they just totally redid everything in there, right? They took out the less seats down in the theaters, the more comfier seats, the more premium seats across the board in all the theaters now. So you'll see some theaters adjust. They might take out seating to kind of help fill those different times and so forth. But there's still going to be some kind of balance between streaming and movie theaters, because I don't think we're going to go back to pre-COVID movie times. Yes, Top Gun did well, No Way Home did well, but we're seeing drop-offs and everything. Mario Bros. Is doing well, but not every movie is going to hit like that for the theater. So they're going to have to find some kind of balance in how they're going to release things.
Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with people just aren't showing up to the movie theaters as regularly. They're not willing to spend money on projects that they just don't care about as much, and that's ultimately where I think that falls, is like everybody's going to be excited to go see a Mario. Like I would never like think to myself that I would be excited to go see a Mario movie, and then I watched like a trailer for it and I was like, I might go see that. Like I love Mario. Like I've always liked Mario. Like, it's a big part of my childhood. So
here's one hint. I don't give any spoilers away. There is lots of nostalgia in this film, not just Mario Brothers, but other Nintendo stuff. So keep your eyes peeled when you see this, because you see all kinds of different hints of Nintendo devices and games throughout this film.
That's cool.
I was a Nintendo baby, so looking forward to that. Just one last thing before we actually get back to some news. But this has been great. I love these conversations. They're very organic. Just based on what you said there, Alex, people aren't willing to spend money on going to a movie theater for a project that they're not invested in. Obviously, that makes sense. But just about the spending money thing, and like what Jarian was saying, that his theater has sort of had a refurb and they've changed some things. I just hope that the cinema experience doesn't become an elite and exclusive experience just to people that have got the money to go. I hope it doesn't.
I agree.
I hope that because not as many people go, they make it so expensive, and then it becomes a more exclusive experience. Because I think that feeling, and we know it from certainly, like talking of Marvel things, moments. No Way Home, couple of moments there that we remember forever. The end game moments, I speak to people who are a little bit older than myself who went to see Star Wars at the cinema for the first time and saw the spaceship coming over the top. And, some of those experiences that you can experience with a big group of other people are just priceless. And I hope that we don't not get those because we can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree.
So back to the new stuff. So first thing off, Disney news, general Disney news. Effective immediately, Walt Disney Studios President of Marketing and 18-year studio vet, Asad Ayaz, has been named the first ever Chief Brand Officer of the Walt Disney Company. So that's interesting.
I think we said a few weeks ago, there seems like there's a shake-up going on there.
Yep, and consolidation of resources, because now Marvel's directly into Disney now and not kind of separate anymore. So yeah, something to keep an eye on. Fantastic Four news. Insider Jeff Snyder on villains. He said, "I'm told that Matt Shakman is planning to go very cosmic with his Fantastic Four movie. Lots of 1960s elements, and that the film will feature both Galactus and the Silver Surfer." Which I don't know how I feel about this. Going right away with Silver Surfer and Galactus. Yeah, you kind of teased Subatomic. Well, you said Subatomica and Quantumania, which is directly related to Psycho Man. You know, you could have started off with them being kind of trapped in Subatomica and Psycho Man and done a Lost in Space type of theme. You know, you could have built up, you could have gone the Puppet Master route, all kinds of villains, Mole Man that you could have pulled from to build up into, you know, a big Galactus showdown. So I hope that Galactus isn't just or Silver Surfer, just a one and done type thing. If they're going to go this route, that it's more of maybe they know of Galactus, they come across a Surfer, but they don't go full on and trying to defeat Galactus yet, like they did in the second
Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Yes,
Fantastic
that film,
Four. Yeah, that movie was not good. And I mean, besides like how they kind of messed up Galactus, I just felt like, you know, that was kind of like hey, let's get past this real quick. Let's do this and get it done real quick was kind of how it felt. And it was like, really, like for Galactus and the Silver Surfer, like
one movie.
Yeah, it was like, hey, let's pump this out there and go ahead and get it done so we can get that checked off the list, is kind of how I look at that movie, which was weird to me because it felt like that movie should have been completely different, you know.
At least make a trilogy out of it, right? Maybe part 1 through 3 of this. You can't fit all this in one film. And if they do Galactus, please do him properly. Don't do him like the smoke cloud thing we saw in the Fox movie. Make him like we saw Airsham in Eternals or even Unicron in the Transformers cartoon. Do that kind of Galactus. Don't do any kind of BS Galactus.
And I think now that we've seen the Eternals, the Celestials, I think they can go down that route quite easily now, and that works so well. I was surprised how well that actually worked. I was sitting there thinking, how are they going to do this? And then when Arishem turned up on Earth at the end, you were like,
"What's up?
Whoa!"
Yeah, I almost feel like those like Fantastic Four movies with Chris Evans, and I cannot think of Jessica Alba, I think it was, and I cannot remember
Ian Grufford and Michael Chiklis.
I feel like those were like such one-dimensional movies, to be honest, and I feel like a lot of those, like it's weird. It's like if you look at Doom, like Doom was a one-dimensional character almost. Like, you know, he's just tech-based. He didn't do any magic. We've talked about that before and stuff like that, but like, it almost kind of feels like that was the same way with Galactus too. It was just like, oh, he's just like a plot device.
Yeah,
you know, that's all he is he's just out there. You know, like don't mind him.
There weren't many layers to the movie, was there?
No, there wasn't. There wasn't a lot of depth. It felt like, you know.
Yep, agreed. I like the 60s. Sorry, I like the 60s reference though, and I think we've mentioned that before, haven't we? That are these guys going to be from the 60s and then sort of, like you said, lost in space, and they're going to re-emerge in the present day MCU, but they've, you know, been around since the 60s, or they've been traveling space for that long. And, you know, if they're going to bring Galactus and Silver Surfer in, are they going to battle them in the 60s or in the past or wherever outside of time? And then they're going to be pulled forward. So Galactus and Silver Surfer haven't gone anywhere. They're still there. It's just they've battled them there. They haven't defeated them.
What if they did something like they fight Galactus at the very beginning of the movie, right? And somehow that fight, they get thrown to somewhere else, they get lost in space. Maybe the Surfer locates them. You know, they have like a previous battle with Galactus before the Surfer becomes his herald. Maybe they come across Zenn-La and the Surfer. They actually become some kind of friends, that kind of stuff. Then he attacks Zenn-La and he has to become the herald, and they go through all that kind of stuff, but in between, we still get the Lost in Space type stuff. That would be a good film, but you got to stretch that out over multiple films. It can't just be one film.
Zenn-La gives me 60s vibes, actually.
Yep.
So I see them all wearing 60s, like flares.
It gives me that like 1984 like movie vibe, you know what I'm saying? Where it's like everything's kind of like you're being watched at all times and stuff like that.
Big Brother.
But like I think one of the most interesting things for me with this character of Silver Surfer and the Fantastic Four and everything would be if you take the Fantastic Four and you give them a movie like that. I don't know if you guys remember that movie that I shared on the group. It was the original Fantastic Four movie that they made that they never really like shared. I don't think it ever got distributed or whatever. I felt like they got their like identities correct. You know what I'm saying? Like as in like they understood that like their powers were almost like kind of similar to like how they identified with themselves, you know?
Right.
And yeah, so like I feel like they need to do that, and that's something where just like that with Galactus and Silver Surfer, I feel like they missed that boat kind of there, you know.
he also talked about writer changes. So Jeff Snyder said Jeff Kaplan in Eon Springer's draft of Fantastic Four was fine, but they brought in that new writer to get it to the level that Kevin Feige and Matt Shakman wanted. Marvel is still open to working with Jeff Kaplan and Eon Springer again. So, Blade news. I don't know if this is true or not, because there are some people who say that Blade has not started filming yet. But there was a rumor going around that Denzel Washington was on the set. Where last year there was a rumor going around that he could be playing Dracula. So I don't know if this holds weight or not, because some say the film hasn't started filming yet. But we also know too that they do film stuff beforehand, before the actual main filming starts. So who knows what this is going to be? But yeah, it's that Dracula rumors coming back up again.
That's awesome.
Yep, that's interesting.
The only other person I could say I would want to see as Dracula other than that would be Wesley Snipes, just to see him return, because like people call him the villain of his own movie, of his own Blade movie. So
yeah, or at least have some kind of cameo with Wesley Snipes in here.
Yeah, something like some kind of shout out or something.
Yeah, kind of like they did with Garrett. Is it Garrett Wilson and Ant-Man in the first one where he's in the car? Kind of have Wesley Snipes do that. That'd be kind of cool, because since we can't get Stan Lee cameos anymore, any of these remakes have the older actors be that cameo instead. So, like, for example, Fantastic Four, we get to see the four of them sitting on a park bench or something, and they go swinging by, type of thing, right?
Isn't that amazing that they can do that now as well?
Yeah.
Wasn't Lou Ferrigno like a security guard in one of the movies?
In the Incredible Hulk,
Yeah. So it's like that kind of ideal, like it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, I like that as well. I think that's a nice touch. And like you said, Joe, and I think that's a nice way to almost continue on Stan Lee's sort of cameo legacy and say, like, actually, we're going to do this, and it's for this actual reason.
Yep. That'ers have Deadpool be all the cameos going forward.
Bingo.
And speaking of Deadpool, so Deadpool 3 news, they add Zeb Wells to the writer's room. Zeb Wells has worked on The Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man's Tangled Web, unreleased New Warriors project, She-Hulk, The Marvels, and Marvel Zombies. So they're getting a pretty good person that's worked with Marvel on different projects before, especially with Marvel Studios on She-Hulk, The Marvels, and Marvel Zombies. So, Morena Baccarin is in talks to return. She said, "I like to be in it. They have called me about being in it. We have not agreed on terms, and everybody's trying their best and doing their best. It may or may not work. I don't know."
She'll be in it.
Yeah.
Which actress was that?
She played his love interest, Vanessa.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah,
she'll be in it.
I mean, he at the end of the second movie goes back in time and saves her, so it'd be kind of weird. Like, I know that we're like doing kind of a change of universe thing with Deadpool, but I mean, they can use that device to completely explain how he ends up in the MCU, anyways.
Yeah.
So like they could kind of, I guess, do it with her or do it without her. Honestly.
Yeah.
I've rewatched the very end, the end credit scene, the last end credit scene where he goes to baby Hitler's.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how hard this would be.
And that's why, like, I'm like, dude, like, if the TVA ever wanted to find an event to try and like prune Deadpool, that would be the one, because they'd be like,
Exactly.
all right, dude, you've gone back to the 1800s, the late 1800s now, and changed something. Like, we're gonna have to take you into custody, like, so.
That might be exactly where they come in.
Yeah.
Exactly the moment. Yeah.
Sean Levy will also serve as a producer on the threequel alongside the film star Ryan Reynolds and Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige. This will mark the first time in MCU history that Marvel Studios has decided to give a movie director producing credit on the film they're already directing. Sean Levy joins Matt Shakman for WandaVision and James Gunn for Infinity War, Endgame, I Am Groot, in the Guardians Holiday Special. So, Daredevil Born Again. There is some chatter that Eldon Henson's Foggy is back. There's been a lot of chatter about that. There's some people that say that he's been on set, but nothing concrete yet. So something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I quite liked him. I thought he was good.
Yeah. Him and Deborah.
Yeah.
The one that played Karen Page.
Yeah, like Karen Page. I can't remember her last name.
I quite liked her as well. I thought everyone was good. I thought the whole cast was good in the Daredevil series.
I didn't think anybody did a bad job. Some
No.
people, like I've seen people talk about, oh, I don't like Karen, or oh, I don't like Foggy, and I'm like, honestly, I had no problem with anybody. I just think that Karen's biggest thing was in the beginning of that show, she ended up being like used to kind of progress their story early on, and then became a staple of the show because of that. And I think people had a problem with that, I guess. So
And she was great in True Blood too.
yeah,
If
I've
you
not
ever
seen
watched that. So
cool.
True Blood, vampires, pixies, fairies, witches, shapeshifters, werewolves. They're all in that series, but it's not for kids. It's adult only content.
sounds like Supernatural.
Yeah,
kinda.
it could be. I gotta still go through watch parts, but I gotta watch all like 20,000 seasons of that.
Yeah.
Isn't there just too much stuff to watch?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When somebody recommends it to you, you go, yeah, that's great, but I'm already watching something else that's 150 episodes I've got to try and get through.
Yep.
Maybe we should just give up our jobs and just watch TV forever.
Hey, if we get paid just to review stuff and talk about stuff on like this, I'd love to do that. You know,
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Bring it up.
Also, it's rumored that Nikki James is playing Christian McDuffie. If I remember correctly, or Kristen McDuffie, isn't she a love interest of Matt Murdock's? If I remember correctly.
The name rings a bell, but I don't really know if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Okay. Echo, speaking of Daredevil, you know, spinning off into Echo time. There was rumors that this was getting pushed back to 2024. Reportedly now it's being released this year around November.
Huh.
So
Okay.
Wow,
yeah,
that's a surprise.
yeah. Because we're supposed to come out this year, and then they got pushed back to next year, and now it's back in this year's fold. So something to keep an eye on.
I bet this is a lead in to Born Again. I bet you
Yep.
this is going to set up Born Again. This is probably going to, because she's on the run after the Hawkeye show. And I bet the Kingpin is going to be going after her and looking for her. And she's going to probably end up at the end of her show needing somewhere to go and end up running into Matt Murdock. And Matt
Yep.
Murdock will be like, let me help you. And
I'm wondering now. I think you might be right, Alex, but I'm wondering whether this is now going to be a special presentation.
I don't
Not a show.
think so because they filmed the whole season.
Have they?
thought, yeah, they
So
filmed the
I
whole
said-
season.
Right, fair enough.
6 episodes?
Yeah, I think it's 6 episodes. So
I
unless
didn't know
they
that.
do like a longer presentation or they trim it down, I don't see how they could do that.
No, that's fine. I didn't realize they'd already filmed it. If they've already
Yeah.
filmed it, then they'll release it. But I wouldn't be surprised if for some of these projects that they've said that they were going to bring out, that they've kind of gone, actually, hold on a minute, we're going to push these back. They might trim them down to special presentations.
I could see some of
Mhm.
those doing that, or you release more things as that instead of full on shows. Yeah,
Yes.
Mhm.
like any new projects coming out they haven't announced yet.
It depends on how big of an influence. I feel like if it's a big event, they probably wouldn't do it as a special presentation. But like all that other stuff, like Werewolf by Night, that really doesn't impact anything. So do it as a
Ye-
special
we don't
presentation.
that we know of.
Yeah, well, yeah, at this point, yeah. So, but
I mean, Blake had been watching the whole time like this, just standing there watching the whole thing unfold, and from the distance. And then we see then we see a shot in Blade starting, and we see the end of Werewolf by Night, and all of a sudden he comes in and gets Jack Russell,
mhm.
you know, and Ted. So, and Elsa even. That'd be kind of cool though to have at least Elsa and Blade, and them team up.
Yeah, I mean, what Blade's been around like over 100 years, basically. I mean, there's no way that he hasn't come across the Bloodstone or know of the Bloodstone. I feel like, you know, as a vampire, I mean, like I feel like he's got to know something, you know, to do with that.
And surprisingly, they could have invited him to the hunt too, because you know, with him being a half breed, maybe.
Yeah, and also being a hunter of vampires.
Exactly.
You know? Like, so it's an interesting little thought.
Moving on to some stuff here, some James Gunn news. James Gunn did talk on DC competing with Marvel Studios. He said, I think it's the opposite. To be frank, I think Marvel, the better movies do, is better for DC. And the better DC movies do is better for Marvel. When people see bad movies, they don't want to spend more money on seeing more movies. So you want good movies to happen, especially since we're taking 2 or 3 years, or 2 or 3 movies a year at DC. So every movie that Marvel has is sort of an advertising for comic book films and vice versa. And you don't want to scare off people from going to the theater. And if we're both making good movies, that's the best of all situations, which keeps the ball bouncing back and forth. At that point, we can talk about rivalries and it'd be fun. And that goes back to our conversation about movies and fatigue and that kind of stuff. And he kind of nailed it with his comments right there.
Yeah, he's not wrong, is he? Really?
Yep.
He also talked about Marvel and DC crossing over. I'm certain that's more likely now that I'm in charge at DC. He tells Empire in the new Guardians Volume 3 issue. Who knows? Just don't expect anything on that front in the immediate future. That's many years away, though. I think we have to establish that we're doing at DC first. I'd be lying to say that we haven't discussed it, but all discussions have been very light and fun. And if you haven't read that Empire article, go read it because there's all kinds of nuggets in that article from James Gunn and Guardian stuff and so forth.
Mm-hmm. I just don't feel that's something that we need at this point in time.
No, and I feel like a lot of those big events, they were like fan service that did that, you know, like it's like you got like the amalgam comics where it's like, hey, let's blend some characters from each universe and make them one. I think there was even an event where they were like, hey, let's have like Superman fight Thor and this person fight, you know, Captain America fight Batman and stuff like that. And then they let the fans choose who won, kind of sort of thing. And I don't even think you could really do that with a movie. Like, let's be honest, like, you know, it would just be somebody's gonna be unhappy. I feel like at the end of the day, if you have like you're gonna have one fandom get upset with the other side, you know.
What was that Netflix thing where you could like choose your story through Netflix? They could do something like
Action.
that. Yeah, you could do something like that possibly as a thing like on, you know, Disney Plus and HBO Max simultaneously release type of thing. But yeah, in the movie theater, unless you like things in the seats to actually do it or do it from your mobile device, which they don't encourage in movie theaters, you couldn't really do something like that in the theaters.
Can you imagine that in the movie theater though? You had to press a button like A or B, and then everybody would just be outraged.
It'd be like college all over again when you have a teacher put something up there and like, all right, A, B, or C or D, you know, like type of thing. But yeah, like I just almost feel like I don't know. I feel like if you put these two ever in a movie, it's just gonna end up causing some sort of conflict because Marvel and DC fans for some reason have that like tend to get toxic with one another and argue. And so like I feel like ultimately it might cause some issues for fandoms.
Or what if you could do like instead of like a whole movie, do like Twitter fights type thing or social media fights where you have like two of the same characters fight, like Hyperion and Superman, Batman versus Moon Knight, Deadpool versus Deathstroke, you know, Wonder Woman versus Hercules, you know, have those type of things via social media votes and that kind of stuff. I think that'd be kind of fun. And then whoever wins, they go out and make the fight happen like an animation or something like that. And you know, that'd be kind of cool.
Superhero beatdowns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're awesome, by the way.
Yeah. You know, I want to, you know, hopefully, speaking of that, they had that series with the Predator who fought the Marvel heroes. I want to see that into a Disney Plus series. You know, that whole comic run they have about the Predator versus that I think that'd be kind of fun. James Gunn also talked about Guardians of the Galaxy 3 stuff. So the first thing he mentioned was that Taika Waititi saved his vision for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. He said, I didn't think it was going to be in there. Endgame came out right after I decided to do Guardians again. So I didn't have much say in what was an Endgame. And then it came out, and then I was like, what the F am I going to do? And that's when Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige told me Taika's going to do Thor and we'll have Guardians in it. I said, thank God, to be completely honest, Thor was never going to be in this movie. Taika took a bullet for me because I was not going to have him in it. I just want to start, I was just going to start up and there's no Thor. So, he answered via Twitter. Someone asked him directly if Guardians of the Galaxy 3 connects and sets up more Kang. He responded via Twitter, Volume 3 is about ending the story of the Guardians, not setting up anything else. I don't even know what's going on with other Marvel movies. So if you're going to see anything, it's probably going to be a post-credit scene. You know, so that there goes the hope for, you know, the High Evolutionary being connected somehow or something else in the film. But
I still think it would be awesome if the High Evolutionary was an anestor of Kang. From like the current time, and he's like a parent or a grandparent or whatever, or you know, like maybe Kang never was actually born on Earth in the MCU, and maybe like that's
what the High Evolutionary made him.
Maybe the High Evolutionary made him or something like that, and or maybe he like gave tech to the High Evolutionary to try and like get a ball and rolling for something that he wants to do ultimately, you know.
You know, what'd be kind of cool as a post-credit scene that you mentioned that would be have him show up to the High Evolutionary like in the past in a post-credit scene and give him something to help the High Evolutionary kind of get to where he is today.
What if he's the reason that, say, like the High Evolutionary was a human that was on Earth? What if he's the reason that he gets off of Earth? What if Kang shows up and gives him something, and that's what sends him on his journey is the High Evolutionary? So it'd be like Kang would almost be like directly responsible for the creation of Rocket and Adam Warlock and stuff like that, you know? So
that's interesting. That's good. I like that.
That'd be a great post-credit scene.
Yeah, it would.
Thunderbolts. Insider Jeff Snyder talked about the rewrites. He said, "I heard that they scrapped the other guy's draft. One of the problems with that Thunderbolts draft was that it kind of had a similar problem to what Suicide Squad had, the David Ayer one, in that it was too focused on the Black Widow characters who are going to be in the Thunderbolts, and it wasn't an equal enough balance for the team. It was very much emphasized the characters we already knew." And this goes along with what I heard from other people in the industry saying that Thunderbolts feels too much like Black Widow 2, like a sequel to it, and not in actually its own film.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at that at all. That's got rewrites. Yeah, that had, because we was all, when they first announced all of that, it was all very strange, and it still is a bit strange.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's kind of like taking a bunch of characters they didn't really know what to do with and kind of just trying to make a project with it, you know? Like, it seems a very odd direction to take something, to be honest.
I missed my notes up here, so we have to circle back to Guardians real quick. One last thing. Karen Gillan teases emotional end of era scene. There's a scene towards the end of the film that's somewhat an end of an era scene, and everyone was crying in the scene. When you see it, just know that none of us are actually acting. Like, everyone was very emotional. It did feel like a goodbye, and it felt real. So, I don't know. It sounds like somebody's dying.
All right. I mean, and somebody big dying, too. It's probably, that's not Drax's death that's causing
Rocket.
That's
it's
like
Rocket
or Quill. Or
not Rocket. Rocket or Quill, because Groot dying won't be a big thing. Because even in the latest trailer, they show Groot with just the head and little tentacles of him just moving along. So, Groot can die and come back. But yeah, it's got to be Rocket or Quill.
And James Gunn just crammed in there in that holiday special that Mantis is Peter Quill's sister.
So it could be her.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be one of those things where either one of them, it's going to hurt either way because they're going to lose a sibling right after they, find out they have a new sibling.
I still think it's one of those big two. It's Rocket or Quill. It's got to be. It's got to be. I know there's somebody come up with a really good idea on the Facebook group last week and said about Rocket. And said maybe he won't be killed. Maybe he'll be devolved, and actually he'll go for a de-evolution, and he'll go. That might be the only way to actually save him from dying is to devolve him, and he kind of just runs off into the sort of forest, and just becomes a raccoon again, And I think that could be quite a bittersweet ending for him, and that would be quite emotional. All of our guys saying bye to Rocket, and he doesn't even know who they are anymore, and he sort of runs off and scarpers off into the forest somewhere.
That'd be a good one. But looking at the breadcrumbs here of all three films, the first one kind of hinted at what they did with the marketing and the logo and the colors, Groot. The second film, the marketing, the logo, and the colors, Yondu, the whole Mary Poppins thing, that kind of stuff. And the third one, we're seeing Rocket, the colors, everything. So something definitely is happening to Rocket, whether it's de-evolving or death. So,
I want to be absolutely kicked in the feels big time with this one. I want to come out of there like blubbering like a baby.
I feel like that scene where he's talking about they'll all get in the ship and they'll all fly away one last time and everything. That's him like telling that he's like gonna be back, that they're gonna get out of there, that he's going off to go do something, that he's gonna do one final part of the mission. It's one of those that he's going on a mission that he's not coming back from, and he's gonna do something like pilot a ship because he was a pilot. He was created to be a pilot. So it would be fitting for him to like pilot like their ship into the High Evolutionary's like station or whatever and destroy it all and kill the High Evolutionary, kill himself, like all that kind of stuff. Because it would be like, that would be like the perfect cap. And it would be one of those moments where the High Evolutionary would be like, wow, like one of the ones that I didn't ever expect to really be worth anything is actually one of my greatest creations because he stood up against me and defeated me. And then boom, like he dies. And that'd be like the end of the movie. It'd be pretty powerful, I feel like.
You know, if they do the whole de-evolve route, will be kind of cool. Is that if they like part of Groot gets planted to grow into a tree, but not into a new Groot, and that's where Rocket lives as a de-evolved Rocket. That'd be kind of the cherry on top of that.
Definitely.
Him and Lila.
Mm-hmm.
X-97 reportedly has been pushed back to 2024. And that's been rumored for a while, but the showrunner Bo DeMaio, he confirmed it. Despite the Friends of Humanity still having their mullets and getting all up in it, things are really starting to look up for mutants, and this is going to kind of come to a head and leads our X-Men to say, what does our future hold for us? We weren't expecting this. So skip that. Okay, we already did Star Wars. Skip all that news. So I was like, wait a minute, where am I back again? Okay, DC news. Swamp Thing. James Mangold is writing. This was confirmed by James Gunn when they're doing the Star Wars celebration. They started getting news out there about it, saying yes, he's also doing Swamp Thing as well. Some of the tongue there, same character. Different universes. But yeah, so he is doing Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm. Which I mean, I'm kind of excited for that because they actually filmed the TV show that they did here. So I feel like I kind of have a little bit of a personal connection to that one because they ended up cutting it a little bit short and completely changing that story. And, you know, I was kind of a little bit disheartened to see that they did that. So,
Creature Commandos, Frank Grillo confirms he has a role. They never told a story about this. He has some bones to pick with MCU in this quote too.
Yeah,
they never told a story about Crossbones. The mythology of the MCU and just what Marvel has in its pool of characters, it's so deep. Crossbones was there for a minute, but he was supposed to be there longer. Then they went the direction they did. I think Crossbones serves a purpose, but I think the interesting thing is that if you see how many people around the world have responded to Crossbones, and again, he's on the screen for a very few effing short amount of time, I think there's more there. I think there was more meat on the bone. I was disappointed, which is why I went over to DC.
Oh, wow. He's literally come out and said it very, very bluntly there, hasn't he? Like, this is actually why I left. But when he said why he went over to DC, I mean, he was dead.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a misrepresentation almost, you know, like, and let's be honest, like that's almost like if they would have done something with his character, that would have been like them doing something, I feel like not the same, obviously, but like Madison, when people were talking about doing a TV show for Madison from She-Hulk, you know, like that would just be like completely unneeded. And it's like for him, like for Crossbones, it's like Crossbones is like a villain in a story. He's not really going to get his own story. He's a part of somebody else's. Like, you know, you're not going to get a project for Crossbones. And then that goes right back to what we were talking about earlier about quality over quantity. And then that's back into, hey, let's just pump out more content just to give Crossbones a project.
And he was go ahead.
I'd like to think that what he means is that he was disappointed that he died, basically, that he couldn't have been around for a little bit longer because you're absolutely right. I mean, good God, can you imagine if we would have actually got a Madison project? I mean, it was funny for a moment, but you know, no, we don't need we don't even need a whole episode about that character, let alone a whole project. And that's no disrespect to the actress at all. That's not what I'm trying to do, but no, you're absolutely right. We wouldn't need a series or a project about Crossbones, but to have him pop up in another, like he could have popped up in New World Order or something, couldn't he? If he hadn't have died, and I don't think he needed to die necessarily. Just so maybe that's kind of what he meant.
But they're not going to do a Frogman TV show, for example, either. You know, like
rip it and rip it.
Yeah.
But think about it, though. He was a mainstay in Winter Soldier, right? So I think that was the first movie he was in. He had a pretty good cameo in the beginning of Civil War. You know, he was a pretty big plot point, actually, of Civil War. And then we saw him again in Endgame. So, you know, he had a pretty good run of appearances in some major films for Marvel.
Yeah. So, no. Yeah, he didn't have a bad run. But I think, again, but this is the villain problem. We've spoken about this, about killing off villains. You know, they don't necessarily need to kill them all.
I mean, I have no complaints with them killing off Crossbones, you know. If I had to pick ones I didn't want to see killed off, I think the top of my list would be Claw, you know? But in Killmonger, probably the top two of my list of villains I want to see come back. And funny, they're both Black Panther franchise people, but think about all they've done in the stuff. You know, yeah, we saw Killmonger come back in Wakanda Forever as a cameo, but they didn't do those guys justice. At least Crossbones had that arc in the MCU, not just a one and done.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
He had a good arc. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the quality of the actor as well that you're talking about as well. They're all of those three that you just, you know, Frank Grillo, Michael B. Jordan, and Andy Serkis are great quality actors. You know, Mads Mikkelsen as well. You know, another person that sort of we lost out of there as well. So they're great quality actors.
And I think for him, I think he feels underutilized almost, you know, because he is a very quality actor. And let's be honest, like, I mean, like if John Bernthal wasn't playing the Punisher, I think he could do. I think he could take a shot at playing the Punisher. To be honest,
Yep,
because,
exactly.
Like, he's like spot on. You know, he's gritty, he's tough, he's got like a deep voice, he's threatening. You know, like so.
I mean,
What was the movie that kept? Sorry, Joan. What was the movie that kept repeating itself? It was a time loop. He was in a time loop. The Frank Grillo movie was in a time. I'm going to find out while you're talking.
Okay, but think about it. I wish he wouldn't have run his mouth like that, because he could have come back to the MCU as somebody else, right? You know, you mentioned Black Widow earlier. He possibly could play a Taskmaster, Tony Masters role. You know, he could be that. I could see him, you know, possibly doing that. Yes, I would have to see him do the persona side of it. But as far as the fighting, the weapons, that kind of stuff, he could do that. I'm trying to think who else he could be. You know, if they did something like Squadron Supreme, you know, he's be more military, more soldier-like. I don't think he could be Squadron Supreme type.
Yeah. I mean, he could honestly be like he could be any kind of mercenary for hire. You know, he could honestly do tons of stuff. I honestly felt like with all his stuff, I mean, he was kind of deep in Hydra. I mean, you know, so like I think he did carry more weight than I guess that actor actually believes. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. Did you find that movie?
I'm still looking.
All right, I'll keep going. He's voicing someone in Creature Commandos and could potentially appear in the Waller series. So it looks like whoever he's voicing in the Creature Commanders, I wonder if that's going to cross over to live action Waller, or if he's playing two characters for DC here.
But Creature Commandos is going to be animated, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's what I'm wondering if how he could cross over. Will they cross over them to live action, some of those, or will he be someone else? Because what Creature Commander do you see him playing?
Well, that's just it. Is I could maybe see him as Frankenstein, but I didn't think Frankenstein would be like the Frankenstein monster version of that character, because they're all kind of like monsters, more or less. They're replacing the werewolf with Weasel. So, you know, I would say the werewolf Warren, but I don't think he'll be playing Weasel, because I'm pretty sure, you know, Weasel will just be voiced by James Gunn's brother. So,
Boss Level, it's called.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
It sounds ridiculous, but it's actually quite fun. There's like a time loop to it, and it's actually really good. But it was that movie, Alex, where I sort of went, he could play Frank Castle really, really well. And I agree. But anyway, carry on, Joan.
Could he play Sergeant Rock in Creature Commandos?
He could, yeah. I think he's got the military voice down, you know, like he's got the like commanding officer kind of like thing down. I could totally see him kind of pulling that off, you know.
And Sergeant Rock could cross over to Waller live action and kind of be the replacement for Rick Flag, since Rick Flag's dead in DC now.
I heard something about like I thought, and I could be wrong, but Creature Commandos was going to take place in the past, and they were going to be led by Rick Flag's like grandfather or something like that. So it was going to give like Rick Flag that tie of how he ended up in like the Suicide Squad position, because like his family, I guess, had been in the military doing similar things in the past.
So maybe if he's maybe the Rick Flag's grandfather in the series as the animated one, and he crosses over to Waller, can we see him a little bit aged with her being de-aged, and kind of the start of her whole special projects thing that she's been doing with Suicide Squad and Batman, all that other kind of stuff?
I think they would probably put the like what would really be interesting would be, we saw Weasel in the Suicide Squad movie, so it would almost be like he was on the Howling Commandos before he was brought there. So it would be almost one of those things where it'd be like, you know, that was the reason that he was put on the Suicide Squad. Was because he was there almost
in the Creature Commandos.
Yeah. So but I mean, I don't know. I think it would be really interesting if they chose to do that, to be honest. I mean, they can honestly write it however they really want. you know. So
Peacemaker news. We only have that. So James Gunn via Twitter confirms season 2 will happen, but it's not going to happen till after Superman. And I can't remember when Superman's coming out. I know he's in.
Say, that sounds like a long way away.
I think I think it's like Legacy of Superman's gonna be 2025 or something like that.
So I wonder if he has to finish writing that and doing that movie, and then he'll go over to do, because I don't think they're gonna wait till 2026 to bring Peacemaker out.
But I think Waller's gonna be like the knockoff 2.0 season of Peacemaker, where it's going to kind of touch on a lot of the stuff of Peacemaker, because we saw Waller in Peacemaker, right? Like, so I feel like what's going to suck though is I feel like we're probably not going to see like what's his name, Vigilante. We're probably not going to see him. We're not going to see like a lot of those characters. We're probably going to get Peacemakers kind of just like, hey, you know, like now you're being put into another situation where we need you to deal with something else, because like now you're on Waller's like special team dealing with this. And this is going to be like that TV show thing where we were talking about earlier, where they don't need maybe a season 2 for Peacemaker right now. So they can put him in somewhere else and then give him season 2 way down the road if they want to.
You know, now that I think about it, they should have had John Cena's Peacemaker do the cameo at the end of Shazam in that post-credit scene, and have those two go back and forth on screen. I think that would have been funny. That would have been hilarious.
Yeah, because they're basically like two 12-year-olds. So
exactly.
Like, you know, like, so it would be like two grown men that are like children arguing about nothing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and they could have done that scene where like Peacemaker's shooting bottles and Shazam's shooting bottles of the lightning, you know? It would have been like funny if they did that. Like, oh, I bet you can hit that one better than you can or something.
Yeah.
You know? But,
so missed opportunities, I guess.
Yeah.
That's all of DC news. The Boys has wrapped filming for season 4. So looking to see what that's going to behold.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was I enjoyed season 3, but it I think I've said this before. It just started getting so ludicrous that it was almost so shocking that it became not shocking anymore. You know, it was like desensitized to it almost. Like, I loved the first season. I think the first season was one of the best sort of blocks of TV I've seen on TV for a long time. And the second season was good, and the third season was good, but it just didn't. It kind of lost that. I don't know. It just lost the spark that I feel like I found in the first season.
And you know what's crazy is I feel like the comics are actually dialed up worse than the TV show, to be honest. You know, like, I mean, like, you kind of have the TV show kind of touch on it, but I feel like out of 10, the TV show's like a 6 or 7 out of 10 of where the comic books are on the extreme scale. Right. You know? Yeah. So who knows? I feel like maybe they did that on purpose, but like it's almost one of those things where it's like they take it too far almost sometimes, you know? Like,
yeah, I don't know. It was almost, but it wasn't making me go, oh, like, no, I don't want to watch that. I was just like, all right. Do you know what I mean? It was almost like they didn't take it. Do you know what? It was almost like they didn't take it far enough.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna shock me. Like, really, like, go on. I want to be really like I want to be questioning myself whether I should be watching this TV program or not. You know.
I think that was the whale scene for me when they put that boat into the side of the whale. Like, I was just like, I remember when I watched that before that season came out, I was just like blown away. I was like, dude, this is amazing. Like, whoa, you know. But yeah.
There's still no word on when it's going to release, but if they're already wrapped the season filming, I won't be surprised if we see this like end of the year, winter time release, if not early next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It seems like it's been a long time since season 3, doesn't it?
Yeah. Harry Potter news for all you Harry Potter fans. HBO is nearing a deal to reboot Harry Potter as a television series. Each season of the show would adapt one of the series' 7 books. So it sounds like they're ramping up for 7 seasons of this, with each season being 1 book. So
where would this story sit in regards to the timeline?
I don't think anywhere. I think it's a reboot.
The entire timeline.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's no people are coming back. There's no continuation. It's basically we're taking all 7 books and making it into a series.
Oh.
Which I've never read the books, but I've heard fans complain that the books have so much more in them in comparison to the movies that they really feel like the books didn't get like the service that they deserved in a
Yep.
lot of the movies, you know?
So maybe a series will give them the time
That.
to do that. Yeah, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, my kids are reading the books now. At least my son is, and I believe my wife read the books too. And yeah, they've said similar that the movies don't do the books as much justice. But
I think
that
that's
happens
always
a
the
lot.
case. I was
Yeah.
going to say that's always the case, isn't
I
it? I
mean-
mean, Game of Thrones, they said that the same about that. You could
I Am
pick any
Legend,
book. Yeah.
Now they split the final book into 2 movies, didn't they?
I believe so. I don't
It's
really
like
pay
7
attention.
books and 8 movies or something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess there's gonna be 7 seasons is what you would expect,
Yep.
I guess,
Yeah,
you know,
that's-
from this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't.
Interesting.
I try to watch the movies. I'm not big into them.
Mhm. Not either.
Yeah.
I think, again, I think that was a missing space for me as well. My kids weren't old enough, and then they were too old. Do you know what I mean? It was that they was the wrong age, my kids, and I was the wrong age myself to watch them. So it wasn't ever something that I got into.
Yeah,
I
my
wasn't
wife-
into the wands and the brooms and that's not my kind of magic that I'm into, you know, like, so.
Yeah, it's a specific thing, isn't it? To be fair,
Mhm.
it is a specific thing. Yeah.
Like my wife watches them, and I try, but I rather watch Twilight than watch Harry Potter movies. I'm sorry.
That's a big statement, to be fair.
Well, at least Twilight, I can make fun of it, and it's and it's
Yeah, okay.
it's those parts of it are like, what are they doing here? Why does it make sense? And it's like, yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Plus, my nieces both were, those when I watched Twilight, 'cause my nieces got into really big, and they were into Harry Potter. So watching them, and they'd watch it. So I just don't know why I could make it through is making fun of it and try to enjoy some parts of it. So, Indiana Jones. So we got a new Dial of Destiny trailer, where it looks like Dial of Destiny is tying back to Raiders of the Lost Ark and some of the villains that he's faced. Like we saw a de-aged Mads Mikkelsen in the trailer. It looks like a daughter of one of his allies or foes potentially is going to be his partner in this film. The one piece of news though is that it will be the longest of the franchise at 2 hours and 22 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to a friend of mine. He lent me the Alien box set. My youngest son wants to go and watch Alien, and he said,
Love that.
"Yeah, well," he said, "I'll lend you the box set." He said because the director's cut of the first one has got like 25 minutes of extra footage, really, really great extra footage. You need to watch it. Like it's important footage, and when you kind of watch it, you'll kind of go, "Why was that not included?" And what he was saying is, were audiences ready for 2.5 hour movies in the 80s? Do you know what I mean? Did you want to go to the theater and sit for 2.5 hours?
Mhm.
I was a
watch
kid in the
movie?
80s, so no.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah, well, me too. So the person I spoke to is a little bit older. He's sort of in his sort of mid to late 50s. So he was saying that I don't think people were ready for that back then. So now people are more accustomed to 2 hour plus movies.
And I could be wrong, but I was a kid when this movie came out, but I feel like Titanic broke the mold on that because Titanic went into theaters and was like a 3.5 hour long movie or 3 hour long movie or whatever. And I feel like that kind of pushed movies out to be longer times almost, or made them more acceptable almost because that movie did a ton of money too, boatload.
Unbelievable how much money that movie did when you think about it. I think if that movie got released now, there's no way it would make that much money. I'm sure it wouldn't. That was unbelievable the amount of money that movie made. But
James
anyway,
Cameron,
well, yeah, that's true.
Look at Avatar movies now.
Yeah.
So
I can understand how they make that money, but I can't understand how Titanic did. But I'm not saying it's not good. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't understand how that many people went to watch it. Anyway, getting back to what you were saying, Jaren, 2.5. How long did you say it was? 2.5 hours.
2 hours 22 minutes. So just under 2.5 hours.
Again, I think we said the same about the Crystal Skull. Like, was it a necessary movie to make? Was that a perfect trilogy that they'd made those first 3 movies?
The name of this gets me though. The Dial of Destiny. It almost makes me think of something to do with time travel. Like at the end of this, like Indiana Jones is gonna like hit some reset button and it's gonna go all the way. Like it's gonna send. You know what I'm saying? Everything's gonna get wiped almost, and it's gonna be like one of those things where we'll get like a flashback to the first movie where it'll be like, oh, all this has just started all over again, and this is one big loop. And that would be just like a perfect little like dot in an eye. I feel like for an Indiana Jones type of thing.
Yeah, and as I said before, I have my gripes with some of the sequels, like Temple of Doom and Raiders of the Lost Ark were great films. What was the other one after that? It was the
Last Crusade.
Yeah, Last
Mhm.
Crusade. That one was okay.
Yeah.
Crystal Skull. The main thing I liked about that movie was that they brought Marion back and that nostalgia, and they kind of wrapped that loop up because you didn't know what happened to her, all this
Mhm.
time. And it seems like Dial of Destiny is doing the same thing, where both Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny are gonna go back to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and kind of close that loop there. And there was rumors for a while that Chris Pratt could be taking over the Indiana Jones franchise. I remember there was rumors a while back on that, and I wonder if they do reboot things and do that, if they'll start the whole thing over with him as Indiana Jones, maybe.
Mhm.
So I think they missed the boat in the Indiana Jones movies. They should have James Bonded it.
Made
That's
it
what they-
Mansell.
That's what. Well, no. Just made it that these are Indiana Jones stories, and just not
Okay.
even not made it as Indiana Jones is a mantle. Just it's just a different person. Once that person's no longer able or wants to play that role, get somebody else in.
Yep.
Don't batter an eyelid and carry on telling stories about it. Exactly the same way that they've done with James Bond. They missed the boat, and now what they've done is Indiana Jones is now an old man, and it's like you've kind of missed the opportunity to continue him as a man in his 30s, 40s.
Mhm.
Or they could have passed the torch to Shia LaBeouf after Crystal Skull. They could have done that too as well. And there was talks about that Harrison Ford could barely get through filming of Indiana Jones on set. So there was those rumors out there and reports. But also too, just watching the trailer, the de-aging they use, I'm just like, we're in 2023, and this de-aging does not look as good as it could be as you've seen in other films.
Mhm. I think they could totally just do like a hey, pass the mantle on to his son type of thing, and let like Indiana's Jones' son, because like Indiana, I'm pretty sure was his dog's name or something.
Yep, Indiana
So
was the
that
dog's
was-
name. Yep.
Yeah, so it was just kind of like that was like his pseudonym, everybody knew who Indiana Jones was, yeah, I mean, just pass that mantle on, make him like a legend, make him like a folk hero, like kind of type thing.
I almost wonder if too that they could pass the torch to his female co-lead in this film, because she has a huge role in this film, and they could pass the torch over to her at the end of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially.
Yeah.
What year? What year is supposed to be like when this movie takes place? It's got to be like what 70s, probably.
It's a good point actually, because obviously the first movies, forget that the first movies aren't set in the 80s.
They're World War One. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're probably not far wrong actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was either Crystal Skull or the one before that. He like jumps into a like fridge to avoid like a nuclear detonation or something like that, because they're doing atomic bomb testing and stuff like that. So that's got to be in the 40s, I would assume. So who knows?
There's always Nazis. There's always some kind of war thing going on.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, my brain is like, there's like a 30-year gap between the last movie almost. It's like 20 years, basically 23 years or something, so maybe there's like a 23-year gap in the actual timeline. Who knows?
So last but not least, Super Mario Brothers. So it will have the biggest animated opening ever, taking down Frozen 2, which right now Mario Brothers is doing 195 million domestic and 368 million globally. Frozen 2 did 358 million globally.
That's incredible numbers, isn't it?
Yeah.
For an animated movie, that is incredible numbers. But I think, as Alex was saying earlier, we've all sort of grown up with Mario. Pretty much every person between, or at least every gamer between the age of 1 and about 60 has played Mario games.
Yep. Even now they're rebooting them now, because you got Mario and the Rabbids games now on the Switch. You've got the 3D games now. It's like every generation has had a set of Mario games from the 80s until now.
Yeah. And to
So.
be fair, you brought up Frozen. Honestly, I think that's more of a testament to Frozen because I feel like
Yeah.
Frozen, like if it was like in contention with Mario, I mean that's pretty big. I mean that means that like people were showing up with the same kind of like ferocity buying tickets, and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe people showed up for that movie almost the same as Mario. Like that's mind blowing to me.
Off
You
the
know?
back of no history.
Yeah, no history whatsoever. Yeah.
I think that music caught on with the first Frozen, and so because Elsa was everywhere, right? You saw Elsa in the other ones after the first one, little girls, young kids, you saw it everywhere. So, Frozen 2 came out of Frozen came out of nowhere, and then just did Game Busters with the second movie.
Yeah, I think you can't underestimate a Disney princess.
Yep.
Mhm.
And unless you're Super Mario, then you can.
Well, I guess you can because Thor's a Disney person technically, and
Hey, Mario's got Princess Peach, so
Yep.
just
Exactly.
saying.
Yeah,
Mm.
this is
Yeah.
it. This is it.
Yeah,
But
and like I said again, this film or during this of the episode that you saw people of all ages in this film. And I went on Friday; it was packed. You saw families there, you saw young kids there, you saw teenagers, adults, all spectrum of it, and that's why I think it's doing so good because this movie, like I said, go watch it. It's gonna hit all the nostalgia of Nintendo. You'll see devices, you'll see hints of other games. Next, you know what I want to see next? If they do a game, do a flipping Punch Out movie. How would that? Think about those fights you would have, and you kind of see him training, go through all that. That'd be kind of cool to do a Punch Out animated film, along other things like I said, like Zelda and Metroid and Metal Gear Solid, Castlevania, all those classic games you can make into animated movies. I mean, look how well the Batman Lego movie did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was Batman and Lego nostalgia. That wasn't
Lego movies. Full stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you
Those
seen?
people behind. Go on, Alex.
I was gonna say, have you seen the live action Halo show at all?
I haven't watched it yet.
No, so like I've seen part of it, and man, is that a disservice to Halo fans? Like I'm not like I didn't read the books, but I've played Halo like pretty much since I was a small child, like all of my life, and like watching that show, I'm like, it's like the person who made this doesn't even really like get the Halo games at all. Like
Is it as bad as Doom?
I mean, I can't really speak to that, but it's just like it's one of those things where it's like they make Master Chief like kind of like the chosen one, and they kind of like pump him up and all this kind of stuff, which is kind of like they do in the games, but they just make the story completely different than I think that you would expect for playing the games.
Speaking of video game films, you know what could be a killer franchise, and Frank Grillo could be the star of it? Call of Duty, especially the new Modern Warfare stuff.
Well, or he could be Snake.
Yeah, he can. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
They should make like a Rainbow Six movie or something like that,
Or he could be Arthur from Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah,
he could be good at that.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, though, Joe, and people going back to the cinema and packed out cinemas. That's what we want to see. We love entertainment and TV and movie, and the longer that goes on, the longer that we're going to be able to carry on talking about this kind of stuff. So that's all good. That's all good.
So we are 90 minutes in, just over. Do we want to do Mando real quick at the last episode and then cut it off, or do we want to do Mando another day since we're already 90 minutes in?
We've spoken loads about Star Wars. Let's do Mando another day. We can do Mando next week.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Actually, what we should do, we should wait until the week after and do the last 3 episodes of Mando to wrap the season up.
That sounds amazing. That's exactly what we'll do next week then. Where can they find us, Jaren?
You can find us on Twitch, Trovo, Twitter, YouTube, our Facebook page, and the Facebook groups. All of them are called Comics Evolved in some fashion. Either it's Comic Space Evolved or Comics Evolved, depending on the platform. On our groups, we have Marvel fans, Star Wars fans, and DC fans as well. And then we have our Instagram account also.
Awesome. We're starting to put up some smaller, shorter videos up on our YouTube channel. Alex is busting out some Funko comparisons and some sort of reviews and some observations around Funko figures. We've done some movies trailer discussions. We've got one up at the moment about Secret Invasion, about that show. We've got a Blue Beetle one coming up at you. We've got an Across the Spider-Verse one coming at you, and anything new with that news that we could be getting the Marvels trailer tomorrow. I dare say we'll have a new video up later on this week.
Speaking of Across the Spider-Verse, one thing that I just thought about here, we didn't talk about in the trailer thing, that you know what the spell at the end of No Way Home where everyone forgot who Peter Parker was and so forth?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like that didn't apply to Spider-Man characters because especially when he mentions them, you know, we talked about the whole, don't get me started on Doctor Strange and Peter Parker from 99, you know, so it sounds like the spell did not apply to either Tobey Parker or Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield Spider-Man either. They all are still aware of each other.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's like the whole spider sense web of life type thing. Maybe they're all connected that way. And that's why they can't forget, but they're immune from the spell, it sounds like. I
The
didn't think
web
about
of
that.
life.
Yeah.
All right, then, guys. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time. Take care.
See you later.
See you guys.